All right, a lot more people than I thought we were going to have, so this is very cool. All right, so my name's Grant. Kind of got that introduction there. I'm going to be taking you today through sort of the practical aspects of this stuff. You know, you're going to hear a lot of amazing presentations. I mean, this is my third year coming back. I've given talk on the big stage 2 years ago, and last year I gave a talk on another stage. And one of the things we, in kind of figuring out, was a lot of times, a lot of us are new to this stuff. You know, we've never touched it. We come here and we hear about this magical thing, like Brian, what Brian's up to down there was literally amazing, right? It was Brian, I guess the first name right? Yeah, I'm like, I know it was Brown, but what they're doing is amazing. But where do you even start? You know, he goes for walks in the woods. He's got a chat. And he goes home and records it and all that. I'm like, okay, where do I get this? Well, guess where it is? It's sitting in your Gmail. It's sitting in your search. There are tons of tools, and as an individual, a lot of this stuff you can use for free. You get started. Sometimes we might call that a little bit of drug dealer mentality, get you a little bit and get you hooked, but as long as you don't think of it that way. But what you could do is there's a lot of the enablement of these tools. So a lot of these tools you can get started with very easily. Now, those of you who are looking for them in your corporate environment, that actually came up the end of his presentation. A lot of those need to be enabled within your organization with the appropriate guardrails and things like that, because he can't work with a customer to produce that. That video is amazing. The pubis, or however they pronounce it. I always heard it, pubis sapient, pubis and all that. They could just do amazing things, but only with the tools that the customer is comfortable with you using. So, I know a lot of defense industry, a lot of things like that. There's also a lot of enablement happening internally, but what you're going to see is you're going to see the mainstream tools. You're not going to see some of the fringe tools, obviously, because it takes through procurement. But we do now see within the military and the government, we're seeing Copilot. So Microsoft Copilot. How many of you are using Copilot? Already got a little bit of that access. Google Gemini is starting to come up in a lot of the tools. Yep, we're actually, so today, most of my demos will be with Google tools, just to get everybody started. It's kind of like there's a Microsoft equivalent, there's a Google equivalent, and there might be a third-party equivalent. I'm a Google certified trainer. I'm one of their actual first trainers since about 2015, roaming the globe, teaching everybody how to use Google. So I'm going to use some Google, but I'll talk about some of their tools. The majority of what I want to talk about today, I want to do as live demos and stuff you can try rather than death by PowerPoint. I hate PowerPoint. I hate death by PowerPoint and slides. And plus, we could always use generative AI to turn those into things. But more and more, what are people doing? They're asking for summaries of that. You're saying, summarize this slide deck. What do I need to know about that? So pretty soon, all those slide decks you build, nobody's going to actually read it. He was mentioning, so there's a hilarious scene out of Real Genius. Anybody see a Real Genius? He was mentioning the video conference call where there was only one person in there. If you go back to that 80s movie, Real Genius, there's actually a scene where everybody is a bunch of reel-to-reel recorders at the professor's lecture. At the front of the room, he has the reel projector, and everybody else in the class is recorders, little old school tape decks and everything. So, what comes along and it comes back around and everything. All right, so I'm going to do a tiny little bit of grounding with everybody, just so you see how all these pieces fit together. As I said, this is really down to earth, because that's one of the things we really wanted to add to the symposium when I was talking with the staff was, how do we kind of get everybody started on this? So feel free to ask questions. We're going to kind of look at 4 major categories of tools today so that you know which ones. And not everybody's going to use the same tools. Now, AI's been around for absolutely forever. AI, we talk about, if we want to go back to the grandfather of AI, we go back to Alan Turing. If you ever saw The Imitation Game, Alan Turing trying to crack the Enigma code during World War II. Anybody a fan of that movie? I'm a big fan of movies. I'll probably reference about 5 different movies today. But Alan Turing, the idea of how do you get a computer to have human-like intelligence? And what he wanted to do back then, and use a lot of it was big, massive computing to kind of break the code, but then he also wanted to create something that could be, and we often say the Turing test. How do you tell that what you're talking on to the other end is a human or a computer? You regularly take Turing tests. You know them as catch-ups. All those little things. Click on all the things. Rotate the image. Anybody seen that one late? Rotate the image, it goes this way. That's like GitHub's one. Listen to this sound and say, type it back in. All these things to make sure you're a human. That's to pass the Turing test. Now, the subset of that is machine learning, and this is where we've really been for probably since about 2012, at least within the Google world. We went in Google in 1998, gets founded. Anybody remember search in the late 90s, early 2000s? It was what happened yesterday or the few days before, because we batched process what everybody searched for, they collected, then we moved forward. Then we went to stream processing, because if we could process every 24 hours, what if we did it every 12 hours? What if we did it every 6 hours? And every 3 hours and every 1 hour? And if you do it every hour, what happens? It's like, why can't you do it every half hour? Why can't you do it every 15 minutes? Why can't you process it in real time? So you give a mouse a cookie. Somebody knows that book. Who knows that book? Yeah. Gonna want the beach, and I think you end up at the beach at the end or something, if you really know that book. All right. Now, so machine learning shows up around Google about 2012, because that's when your search got predictive to say not what was popular yesterday, not what was popular 5 minutes ago. Take what we know about what's popular and what we know about you and predict that. So I live out of Chicago, so I type in Bears. What do I get? Super Bowl, not going to the Super Bowl. You live in Montana, you put in Bears, and you're getting advertisements for bear spray and Yellowstone and things like that. It depends where you're at. You say Giants and you're in the Bay Area, you're getting San Francisco. You say Giants, you live in New York, are you disappointed? Yeah, just like everywhere else. All right, so that was machine learning. And how did we do that? We did that by taking our historical data and training a model. Using that historical data to say, what's the algorithm? Or not even what's the algorithm, what's the weighting of the algorithm? What's the algorithm behind the data we know and how it all relates together? We do that for predictive. So that's where we spent all our computing power up until this last couple of years. And then we kind of think out of nowhere, as the average user, out of nowhere came these things like ChatGPT, and that which suddenly are not just thinking, or not just using our historical data and saying, like an Uber taxi cab it picks you up at this time, at this place, this is what traffic, this is what the weather. Uber was all messed up yesterday in the last couple of days here in Huntsville, I bet, because there's no data on traffic, times and costs and availability when you have really cold weather. There's not enough of it, so Uber prices and all stuff would have been just wacky. Anybody notice that? No, because you guys, if you're all local, you don't notice what Uber is doing. Your travel times, your Google Maps, all that stuff. But generative AI actually got into creativeness. It's when we think of, when we go back to all our sci-fi movies and everything, generative AI is what we really think. The AI is supposed to be. It draws pictures. It can make decisions. And then, obviously, the agentic stuff. I'm going to actually stay away. At the very end, I'll talk a little bit about agentic. But you're going to be hearing about agentic everywhere else. We wanted our session to kind of say, how do we get here? And how do we start using this? So that's sort of our little history, our machine learning, our generative AI, and these slide decks are available. I'll give you a link where also if you want the links that I used in class here today and stuff, they're all in this deck. As I said, I don't want to do a lot of things. Now the last thing though, you hear, whenever you talk about this stuff, you hear the word LLM, large language model. What's that? Well, when we think about a model, like an Uber model, they put in hundreds of inputs. So they would have from the historical taxi cab trip, you might know the hour of day, the day of week, the temperature, was it raining or not? This is all the stuff like Uber puts into their models. And they might put dozens or hundreds of data points. These large language models are trained with billions or hundreds of billions or even now trillions of different input points. And they look at the data in lots of different ways, and they take months to train on massive amount of computing, billions of computing hours put in to train these. So these are just massively, massively scaled systems. They're almost like a new type of database where you basically put something in and you return the closest match. I'll actually use, when I get to the Gemini tool, I'll give you a little bit of idea of how you get a good way to think about one of these, but I'm gonna use Gemini to help me do that. But these tools, these are being built by these mega companies out there. Your Google Gemini, your OpenAI, your Grok, XAI, Amazon's Olympus, or now called Nova. All these different companies are building these massive models to the point that, and I think I probably said this, anybody been in my presentation before? Do I look familiar to anybody? Anybody? No? All new people? Cool. If you were here two years ago, I said, you're probably never going to build an LLM yourself. And last year, I probably said the same thing. And everybody comes in the room still and is like, Grant, am I ever going to build an LLM? Probably not, unless you got billions of dollars. You might query an LLM. You might ask it a question or a series of questions and pass all that through, but you're not probably building one because these sort of companies build them. We then use them. They spend billions of dollars training these models. You know, 5 years ago, maybe if you're part of the AI Huntsville, you might have had a focus group talk it, or a couple of years ago saying, yeah, we're going to build, a little desktop type thing, but it's not going to be doing what this stuff is. It's massive amounts of data. But we'll talk about how they work a little bit. So let's first talk about the interactive tools that you actually use for this. And I'm going to demo. So these are your tools, like you go to ChatGPT. Anybody been to ChatGPT? Yep, you interact, you ask a question, right? And it comes back, and you kind of have a conversation. Now, are we going to have that conversation where it suddenly wants to prevent itself from being deleted and blackmailing you? No. You're not going to worry about that just yet. They're doing that in very specialized programming environments. You're going to ask a question, ask for a clarification, and start doing things with these sort of tools. So don't worry, you're not going to fall in love with the AI this way, just out of this class. You're not going to, it's not going to then send a rocket to your house or something like that when you break up and stuff like that. It's just you're going to ask it questions. And because the majority of what we do is and this is how we're used to using computers, we search for something on the internet and we get back a result. We're used to asking it questions. Okay, so we can ask this, and it's just got different types of ways to answer it now, in that it's got more knowledge, it's got a bigger brain. Okay, think of that LLM. It's like a database, like our brain is a database. Is our brain, can we think of our brain as a database? Absolutely. You ask your brain a question, say, when have I seen that, that film before? Or, hey, who was the main character? Oh, I remember that scene from, Real Genius, whatever. Now, Microsoft's got one, Copilot. Good example. We're seeing that kind of everywhere. You can go to Copilot, Microsoft.copilot.com or Copilot.com, and just start interacting and ask questions like a little search, but have a chat and say, help me do something. Amazon's Q, more geared for people working within the AWS area. And then Gemini from Google, and then Notebook LM and Copilot notebooks. These kind of fit in there. So I'm going to demo the two Google ones here. As I said, I'm going to be a little Google-centric because it's nice to kind of look at what's one sort of category of offerings. If you're in the Microsoft world, you will find almost the same sort of tooling available from those. So I'm going to jump in here. I've actually set up my account. Where's my, let me pop over here to this guy here. And so I'm going to start off here at gemini.google. And I'm just going to go in and start a new chat. I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to say, where is, just think of it like a normal search. Let me see if I can zoom this in a little bit for those of you looking. Let's see if we can get a little bit more zoom. Where is space, where is Space Camp located? So you could use it like a little search engine. It's probably going to come back with a little bit more. It didn't come back with 5 web pages, though. It came back and told me what's address. Okay, a little bit better than a normal search, right? In fact, that's what you're seeing now in your regular Google search. You're seeing a search at the top part of the your search, and then you'll see the actual links to things that would actually be a Huntsville. So, for example, we would just do the same thing. Where is Space Camp? Oh, typoed it. We got here AI overview, NASA's Space Camp, and I didn't even spell it right. And then down here would be the links to the page. But when you're interacting this way, you're actually asking some questions. And say, okay, we can now say, how many people go to space camp a year? Now, obviously, it's got that. Remember, think of that LLM. If we just purely ask that, it would be the LLM, what information the LLM had when it was trained. And it kind of extrapolates. It does stuff. Now, let's imagine, so here we go. All right, annual space travelers. Oh, I said space. I thought I said space camp. But I was asking you about space camp. Now, when I start to interact, when I start to have this chat type thing, what's happening? What's it going to do here? Is it going to suddenly say, I don't know what that means? No, because it's going to feed all the stuff we've just talked about, and it's going to come back and go, oh, we answered this question with space, but he really was talking about space camp. He wanted to have that answer. And what does it do? Apologies, I shifted gears. There we go. Now, your normal search engine doesn't do that, does it? I don't know. It's not rocket science. Oh, maybe it is. All right. So there we go. We got that information. Now, I'm working as end user. I'm able to have this information. Now, I could give it other context. I can give it more information. Notice over here, I could do plus, I could upload. And I could create content from some things. I could upload some files I have. I could upload some information. I could upload a photo. And I say, hey, what's going on in this photo? Would these kids be at space camp? I could actually get into that component. That's now what this is. When you're sort of talking to this just as end user, you're just talking to it. You're prompting it. You're saying, what's my prompt? Just like if you were talking to a human. So am I talking to a human on the other end? Probably not. But what I'm able to do is have that interactivity. Now, that level of interactivity is one thing. When you start to get deeper and deeper in talking to these models, we actually find out that there's actually subcategories of these models. So Google's got this big large language model called Gemini. Okay, that's the name of their one, or Gemini, depending on how you want to pronounce it. You know, Microsoft licenses ChatGPT's, OpenAI's ChatGPT engine. Anthropic is another one you can use. There's a number of these different models to use. But the way you actually do it, because this seems a little bit slower than a normal chat, because there's a lot more computation, there's a lot more things passing back and forth. So I'm going to start a new little chat here. I'm going to go down here in the corner, and you'll notice here I got Gemini 3 Fast, Thinking, or Pro. Now, Fast is going to be the fastest type model. It'll be most closest to like a search. But we could say, let's just give it the exact same. Tell me about space camp. Now, I started a brand new chat, so none of my history is in here. It's a brand new. I'm just talking to it. I punch it in, and it comes back and says, hey, here's what we got. Bucket list destination for everybody. There we go. What could you actually do? Now, I'm going to start another chat. I'm going to take that same thing, and I'm going to say, tell me about space camp. And I'm going to start a new chat, and we're going to go to a thinking model. Now, thinking models are going to be a variation more for complex problems. So this one's probably not that big of a complex problem. This is where you could upload an image of like a math equation and say, what's the answer? You know, but let's see what it comes. Okay, a little bit another type summary there. A little bit, very similar results, but luckily it's keeping track of what I do. Okay, so what did it come up with? About a page. This one came up with a little bit more details, very similar stuff. And we could also go to Pro, and Pro is advanced thinking and math code. So we're going to just start a new code. You can also toggle while you're going. We're going to say, tell me about space camp and the level of mathematics I need to learn there. Need to learn to really go into space. Now I'm going to ask for a little bit more depth here. So the engine goes through a lot more work. So when you start to, you're kind of selecting your model. Okay? Within Gemini is sort of the class of model coming out. Now this will be important later on when we talk about like people who actually program with these things. So when you're using something, you hear about like AWS, you hear about Microsoft Azure, you hear about Google Cloud, when you're actually trying to put these into your own applications. So if you're an application developer, you say, hey, I want to talk to this, I want to use this model because this model is cheap and fast, but it's not as depth as this model or this model. But here we go. What did it tell us? Oh, it said there's definitely a big difference between becoming a professional astronaut and going to space camp. Okay, I don't know that the kids know that. I think of my son, yeah, I'm going to space camp, right? Because, but part one was what's space camp there. Part two was the actual flying in space. But we can now, oh, would you like me to find specific dates and costs for the next adult Space Academy? Well, that's kind of nice. We could, sure. Remember, I'm having that interactive. Now, when you're working with these, you're kind of deciding what level of depth you'd like to actually work with. All right, so now I'm going to kick it off with one more level deep here. If you, and you can even start to, so you could go back to your home tonight, you could go into your Gmail, pull up gemini.google, you'll see a similar interface. You probably won't see the Pro in the upper corner like I have because I'm logged in with an account here that has a Google Workspace account. Those of you whose organizations are using Google Workspace, you do wind up, that includes a license to use Gemini Pro and puts it under your corporate agreements. So anybody have Gemini Pro or use Gemini this way back at the office? Yep. And you know everything you're doing is safe because, well, within your organization because they've approved that all your search history and everything is part of your Workspace account. All right. So here we go. It gave us our options on our Space Academy. Now, I'm going to go in here, though. I'm going to start one more chat, and I'm going to ask for instead something called deep research. Now, this is the fascinating stuff. So my father-in-law, he's a retired physician. We chat every now and again. He says, yeah, back when I was in college or university and doing med school, I could go to the librarian. I could ask the librarian to research something for me. The librarian research, I'd come back the next day and they would have pulled some books for me. They would have summarized. That's what library science do. Anybody ever hear those stories? Have you ever done that? You've done that? At a library, you could do that still?
No, not still.
Okay, this young lady here, she's nodding her head. But that's what librarian science was. But I think that art's been lost or something, or is that what's that? It's evolved, yes. There we go. So let's bring it back. Let's ask it to summarize the relationship between Space Camp, NASA, and Huntsville. Okay? Now, this is going to take about 10 minutes. We're going to put this off in the background. Or we can play a little Martha Stewart here. You know, Martha Stewart puts it in the oven. This needs to go in the oven for 2 hours. Then what happens? Ping! Pulls it out of the bottom oven, and there it is. But let's see what it wants to do first. So it's going to come back and say, this is what I think you want me to do. Is this what you want me to do? Come on. I've put a plan together. I'm going to research the historic establishment of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, looking for transfer of Wernher von Braun and his team, investigate the origins of the Space and Rocket Center and Space Camp, determine the official legal and operating relationship between these two, and then I'm going to analyze the results, and I'm going to create your report. Is that what we wanted to do? Wow, this is not your normal search. This is not even your normal kind of just chatting with the ChatGPT or somewhere like that. So we're going to say, yeah, that looks great. All right, so remember I said we could play a little Martha Stewart? I ran this one before downstairs, so let's see what a similar result. So this says, hey, you can come back to this later. I'll let you know when it's done. It'll be in your sort of your history here. So I'm going to pop back here to Gemini. I'm going to go down here. So this is what I asked it earlier. And this is the report it produced for me. It produced here a full multi-page report, complete with, down here, complete with bibliography and everything. Now, how many of you think that's cool? This is what people are using on a regular basis. My sales teams, before they go into a meeting with a customer, they say, they literally have a standard prompt where they go in there and say, okay, research this company for their cloud users of Google Cloud, AWS, and Azure, and it's going to go out there and scour anything that's kind of been written about that company or that market, that company or that market, and come back with sort of a summary form. So they've got a much better position going into their customer meeting. How about that? Now, they have the same cut and paste prompt they use every time. Okay? They go in there, my colleague Corey, my colleague Jeff, they sort of, yeah, Grant, I took that little script you wrote, that prompt you gave me, and I run that every time. And all I kind of do is change the customer, maybe I change the field they're in. Cool. Well, guess what? They almost have an agent. What's the agent? The agent is me wrapping it up so they don't have to remember that prompt. And instead, they go to our customer research agent, put in the customer name, and perhaps our agent says, find out what field that customer is in, come back what city that customer's in, what markets that serve, then come back and then run that deep research and then come back with the report for them. That's what agents are. Don't tell them. Don't let the agent people who build agents. But that's where agentic AI is going, is how do you operationalize that versus it being, what prompt should I do, Grant? Instead say, you know what, you don't have to keep asking me because a new person joined the team said, yeah, I heard you gave Corey and Jeff, they got a cool new prompt from you. Can you share what that prompt is? Even better, go to the agent. And that's where your agent tools are coming up. So that's what you're going to hear. So everybody builds their own agents. At the end, Brian here's 3 agents I have talking about. Now, his are a lot more fancier than my agents, but that's just a matter of various agent building tools and things like that. But what it is very much about the management of how do you operationalize something? Because it's working with one person, or you do it frequently enough, you don't want to have to remember that. You want to automate it and move on to something else. Now, there's sort of a middle ground actually there for that. At least in Google, we call them gems. So you could just go and plug in over here, and you could actually just make a gem. You actually see that in your Google interface, that I could build a gem instead and kind of use that to design my prompt, and I'm sort of building a mini application. So if you're not ready to go full-on agent yet, you explore things like gems and stuff like that. But that's where, this is one of the interactive type tools. So Gemini, the other would be Copilot. And if I flip over, I'll flip over to a different account here where I got some Copilot. I just need let me just toggle to a different user here. I need one that I've got a Copilot license on. Where is you guys are like, you have way too many profiles, Grant. I know I do. That's what somebody's already saying. Yep, too many profiles, Grant. Oh, you know what? It's on my other screen. Let me pull over a tab. All right, so I'm going to pop over here just so you can kind of get an idea. So I'm going to go to Copilot.Microsoft. And look what? Look, what do we see? Does it look the same? Pretty much. And you're going to see a lot of the same things. Do you want it to be smart? Are you thinking? Are you studying or learning? So once you work with one, you're kind of like, well, which one do I have availability to? And start to do. So, within the business environment, there's the ones that your organization's actually working. If you're already a Microsoft Office product and, Office 365 enablement's probably in your future. Even if I pop over to Chat GPT, look at that. What can I help you with? So these are the interactive tools. Now, any questions so far? Is this useful to everybody? Fun, good stuff? All right, so now we're going to show you, though, and this one, it was cool. He brought this up at the very end of his presentation. It's like, yes! I always want to say, yeah, come to the session. We're going to talk about this. We're going to look at something else. We're going to look at something called Notebook LM. Now, Notebook LM is another one of these interactive tools. This one comes from Google. Microsoft's got one similar, and this in GPT is GPT projects is what they call it. Now, this is more, I've got a lot of documentation. I've got some websites. I know sort of the background I actually want to use with things. So what we do is we pop in here and we create what's called a notebook. I'm going to take my notebook and I'm going to say, well, what do I want to add to this notebook? Well, we'll add the Space Camp website. So let me just pop in www Space Camp. Actually, I think it's Rocket Center. Let me just pop over here. So the Space Camp website, let's just grab that website. We're going to drop that in here. So we're going to add that. And we'll just say, all right. So we said, here's that website. So then now what we've done is we've set our context. Okay? That's our context within this notebook. And we can now go ask questions, and it immediately knows that's what I'm supposed to be thinking about when you're talking to this. So we're going to go into this notebook and we're going to say, does Space Camp operate year-round? All right, so it's now using that. And this is a concept of basically we're grounding the large language model. So the large language model is sort of that database that Google provides in Gemini, and Microsoft uses OpenAIs and all that. But what we've done here is we've asked the question, and it's kind of said, well, in the context of what you've provided. Now, you can use Notebook LM for free on your Gmail personal account. You're allowed to have like 100 sources on the left, and you can go through and just start asking questions. So if you're in real estate, you could dump about a properties in there and say, this is my customer, which of these? You got any real estate people in here today? I had one a couple years ago. Yeah. You could literally take a bunch of real estate listings, like brochures even, and say, and then you could actually chat with it. Say which one of these has 4 bedrooms. Now, you're only going to do 100, so it's not going to replace Zillow or anything else like that, but it's a reasonable thing. There's a lot of people are using this in a lot of different ways. Now, let's put a couple more things in here, though. Let's give it a little bit more. So it's not just about Space Camp here. Let's go ahead and add a source. Now, I was poking around. It'll take a website or a YouTube video, and let's look at YouTube Space Camp movie. Now, somebody's put the Space Camp movie onto YouTube at some point. So guess what we're going to do? It is there. I think we have to get through. Anybody ever remember this movie from their childhood? You're here, You're at Space Camp this week. The rocket, it's the same rocket area when you're out in the big rocket. You go back and look. They're like in that same area, in that center courtyard right outside that building. I love that movie. I thought that movie was 1986. We're going to throw that in here to our Notebook LM. So we can paste that in. Now, it's already got all the information for that because what it has is a transcript of the audio. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily, it's not processing that movie in real time, but if the movie's on, or the video or whatever you have is on YouTube, it's taking that text transcript. We could throw a couple more things in here. I'm going to upload a couple more things that I prepped. So I'm going to upload some files. And over here, I've got an Artemis presentation I found here online, a PDF document on Artemis. And let's say we had a list of students attending in 2026, where they're from, what cities, what states, what their age groups are. We could actually put all that and kind of merge it together. But we're going to say, we got to let it finish. So that presentation it hasn't seen within this notebook. So it's indexing that basically is what it's doing. It's integrating that into its search space. And it's going through and processing that. We give it images. We could give it more further documents, other websites. You know what? We should probably put in there, because that movie, it doesn't probably no context just yet. Let's show the Wikipedia. Space Camp movies. And I can't spell it right, but I just want that. So we'll grab that, and we'll throw that into our here. So now it's got that information. Now, chances are Wikipedia has already been indexed, but there we go. So now we got Space Camp video, we got Space Camp programs, we got Space Camp Wikipedia information, we got the Artemis presentation, which was just recently, like 25 PDF I found. And say, how can Space Camp incorporate Artemis into their offerings? They probably already do this. Yeah, you're already doing Artemis back there? I know we got some. But let's see if it's got any good ideas for us here. So it's considering the Artemis integration. So it's taking that presentation it got from NASA to make it kind of real updates. So you could actually, I assume you have scripts and other things related to your simulations that you put the kids through, or the campers, and the adults when they come. You could actually put that in and say, how could we adjust this based on this new information? Because there's a launch 2 weeks from now. Incorporate whatever materials we could have on that and make it realistic. Throw some new names and say, oh, they left somebody on the, they left somebody, accidentally landed, and there we go. So they've now given us updated launch and flow profiles, current simulations focused on the space shuttle. They could update to the SLS, deep space trajectories instead of always LEO missions, gateway operations. They depict the campers with doing the data list. Modern curriculum might have it through the Orion capsule. The Viper rover missions already offers robotic station and corporate challenges of the Volatiles investigating polar exploration rover. So it's grabbed all this information for us. Now, this is different than just going in and having that chat with your Gemini like we were doing. This Notebook LM is absolutely amazing. I've got the Pro version licensed here because, well, I've got the license, so if I got a Google Workspace license. You could also, if you want to use these personally, you can get a Google One subscription, like $20 a month, and then you get the Pro version of the tools without having to set up your own business stuff. I did this one with my father in my personal account. So my father passed away about 10 years ago. I took his obituary. I took his death certificate. I took the notes that my mother had from his celebration of life. She gave us a talk about him and everything. And then I took all his notes. I took his patents. I took his favorite movies, and I put it all together. And what's amazing about this sort of tool here is, and Brian alluded to this, notice all this stuff over here on the other side. An audio overview, a video overview, mind maps, reports. It can go and generate all of those additional things off the context. Now, some of those take a few minutes to do. So if you're interested, my father I'm happy to show you after the event. But let me grab the one. Great. I put 4 sources into both. Let's see, is this the one that I just loaded? I practiced my demo, and of course, practicing my demo. Okay, no, it's the other one. Sorry. And what I had to do is I had to generate the audio. Let's see if it's here. And let me just turn up my audio here. And it actually makes you audio. Oh, come on, where did need my audio on my, sorry, I'm running 2 screens and need to make my audio go back up. But what we actually can do is have it generate the audio. Oh, you're going to generate it again? All right, we'll try one of these others. So we can do a video. We can generate a mind map. We'll generate a report. Create your own, a briefing document. So we could have a briefing document about Space Camp. What are these? These are predefined like prompts. Gems ultimately wind up when you're doing things the same over and over. What do you start doing? You start building agents to do standard things. So your various providers have started giving you more and more things. Yeah, what do we get? We get still generate the audio and the video. We'll be able to check on that. We got our Artemis missions and Legacy of Space Camp going on there. Oh, let's get an intro. We might as well get them all going. Slide deck, there's our presentation, and a data table. Let's see, so what do we get there? Okay, there's our mind map of the relationship of our various things we provided. And so we could take our Space Camp film, probably expand that out, casting characters. Okay, there you go. Historical contents. Anybody ever use mind maps? So you could take all your thoughts. I know a Googler who every day before their day starts, they throw all their stuff related to their meetings, put it into Notebook LM, and then have it generate them a podcast to summarize for when they're going to work. It's like, here's a summary of your day, your meetings. Now, everybody works in different ways. That's the thing. There's no one-size tool. Oftentimes I work with a customer like, yeah, we want that. And it's like, well, that's how my brain works. That's not how everybody's brain. My salespeople. Some salespeople love it. Some people are like, yeah, I do my things a different way. That's the beauty of this idea of, additionally, here using Notebook LM, just throw your thought, throw what you're working on. If you're researching something, if you're studying something, put that together. If you're preparing for a certification exam, like an Amazon cert or a Google cert, we throw all our materials into these and make notebooks. You can share these within your organization. So I can say, hey, I'm going to share this with Corey, and everybody contribute. We kind of build this little operations manual, if you will. You could take, if you have notes on procedures and things you do, that's where these are absolutely amazing. So let's see how our notebook's doing. So we could download that. We'll also minimize it here. So let's see what else we got. Let's go back to our studio. Let's see, anything more done? There we go. Oh, we got some mission specifics. Okay, that's our data table. What data did it find? So it summarized all that information. So would that help anybody? Nice little summarization of all that, right? And all I did was take what? My various multimedia resources related to that. So, all right. Now, of course, come on, come up with one of these for us. There's our briefing. There's our, what do we got? There's our 2 minutes ago. Oh, that was our mind map, sorry. Click back. And, oh, that was our chart, sorry. I've got screen real estate. Oh, there we go, look at that. That's not a graphic that we built that exists out on the internet anywhere. It built that. So it kind of put that, and then so we could say, hey, can we update that for Space Camp or other things and stuff like that. Yeah, so that I think was in studio. What we got out of that was our, I think that was our graphic. Yeah, that was our infographic. Let's see, and you're still doing the audio and video. That one's been slow lately. I was hoping that was pre-built, but. So this is, though, one of those other ways to use it. So you've got the ones where you're kind of chatting, and then you've got your other ones where you're grounding it. Now, larger scale tools like this, when you actually give it large volumes of knowledge, that's where things like RAG come in, retrieval augmented generation. That's when you're kind of building a company database, and it vectorizes the database because you're putting all your context. But this is effectively a mini RAG system, because that is my context over here of what I want to actually talk about. So I'm grounding the model. So every time it runs the query, it's also putting that in. Yeah?
For your sources, you
Yeah.
have a movie, a PDF, and you have websites.
Yep.
Can I name a book?
Can you name a book? As long as that book would be in a PDF source, it's got to be sort of in the public domain, but if you have a PDF of it. So over here, I've got in here that I could upload files, websites, resources from my Google Drive, copied text you've copied from somewhere.
So I would need to find a PDF of that book.
Or text, or something that could extract it from. Yeah, you know, it's got to be digitally somewhere.
Is there not an option for it to search for
Yes.
sources?
We could also go over here, and we have our deep research, so we could say add this, and let's add a deep research to this, and let's add the use of Space Camp in movies and books over the last 40 years. So we're going to have it add that as a context. So kind of power all of these, because all these start to come together. Because otherwise you're going, well, Grant, what about that report you produced in the other one? Well, shouldn't they just have an option? Yes, somebody does there. So yeah, so it's preparing that. It's telling me I'm going to go plan that, and I'll add that in so next time you come back, we'll be all good there. Let's see. Yeah, audio and yeah.
After you created media in the studio and then added a new source, will it automatically update the media that it's created?
No, you would go back and re-request those. Yep. Yeah. So just, I mean, what you're able to do with this is just phenomenal. Let me see if I've got any in mind. Notebook LM. So I'm going to pop into my Notebook LM under my regular account here. Oops, I accidentally searched there. The notebook came up. Yeah, so I just have tons of notebooks for various things. What was this? Wartime Food, a scientist's guide to diet and conservation. So cooking and dining in Imperial Rome. I think this was actually my son's project. He was playing around with something. He's got looks like a bunch of pictures. Yep, directions for cookery, there you go. That was a source guide of an image. And what we're able to do is kind of go back here. So it was cooking and dining, a comprehensive guide with 70 sources. And we could say, I have a cow and a head of lettuce, and I like pizza. Pizza. What could I do? I don't know what it's going to come up with. Who knows? But what's it got? It's got that context. And it's got the knowledge of the LLM, but it's not allowed, it doesn't go out there and scour the web with this. It's grounded on what we've provided it. But the model will say, well, these are common recipes. These are common things put together. So it's probably going to tell us to make something. I don't know. Considering culinary combinations of what it knows back in Rome. This is the sort of thing my son would totally do. Come on. Exploring lettuce cooking options. So lettuce is a substitute for pizza crust, maybe? Yeah, go ahead.
So, are you able to pull together research from paywall sources? If your company has a subscription, are you able to plug that in?
You would have to download that for Notebook LM. This doesn't attach, but see, that's where somebody would build an agent. And that's where your tools, so at the end of his lecture, he was talking about those, the acronym is blanking for a minute, but basically they make the MCP, or no, MC, what was it, MC? Yeah, yep, and that's sort of the interface to that. So that is more where the next step, somebody would build that for you, or somebody would provide an interface. So that's sort of your API to those, to the MCP. Yeah, I was not getting MCP, too many acronyms stuck in my head. But so this isn't gonna have that directly. But who knows down the line, what we do with this and what I did a year ago and what I did 2 years ago, completely different with this tool now because there's more capabilities. Yeah?
You mentioned being able to use a YouTube video and
Yes.
audio data. Could you also ask a question like what this character is wearing in that YouTube?
So I don't believe it does that because you actually have to, it's not processing video this way. There are other tools for that, but this is not going in and actively looking at the video yet. Because in this context, it's in doing what I know about it, it's grabbing the transcript of the audio. But there are other tools that will analyze video. It's a lot more computationally expensive to analyze video, but there are tools like tennis matches to automatically cut scenes, so for like a news broadcast where they could say, hey, this was, grab all the points, click this one, that's the one we want to show on TV, grab this angle. Kind of what Brian was talking about with indexing all his videos from CES, saying assemble me a video of all the really good plays. There are tools that kind of specialize in that. This is more of a generic question or somebody? But it is truly amazing what we can be up with that. Let's see if we got our, see the content's still going. Okay, somebody remind me at the end, we'll come back and revisit that. So this is your first set of tools. And that's, when you're seeing those, and they're everywhere. Again, using them in business, we're scared of this stuff too, okay? Why are we scared of this? Because what's it doing with the data? That's why we have to have those enterprise agreements. We don't want people just randomly going and dumping. You're about to give it financial data. You could download that financial data. Actually, I have a YouTube video where I took a friend of mine in Chicago area. We have really high property taxes in Chicago and in Illinois in general. And he does property tax. You could submit disputes with the county and the state. And so we took, and we found on the city of Downers Grove, we were able to download a data file of all their property tax data. It had like size of the house, square footage, all this. And we put it into Notebook LM and said, find me properties that appear to be undervalued in Downers Grove. And it came back with about 5. I did a YouTube video on this. And it came back with about 5. It's like, Fritz, these are the ones we need to look at. You need to go knock on their door, say, how would you like me to save you $5,000 a year on your taxes, on your property taxes? So probably not quite that, but a couple thousand a year, which makes a difference in Illinois. I don't know what your property in Alabama, are they pretty good? $12,000, $15,000, $18,000 a year on a $50,000 house $500,000 house to pay $12,000 a year in property tax and tax service for schools. I know it's insane. 1,200, yeah.
It's really low.
We're 12,000, yeah. And so when you could say, well, the house down the street has lower property tax, but they've got this, mine should be lower too. And that's what this buddy of mine does for a living. So, but yeah, I did a YouTube if you're curious on that, but I did take data. It's not really built for processing financial type data, but I just gave it CSV files and it did an amazing thing with them. So there's a lot of flexibility. Many times the way we're using these tools, they weren't necessarily built for that, but they do a really good job with that sort of stuff. Now, let's talk here a little bit about the next set of tools. Now, the next set of tools are just the ones built into your applications. How many of you use Gmail for your personal world? Does Gmail help you write your emails already? That's Gemini. Yeah. So in here, I'm just going to pop in, and Word, Excel, PowerPoint, you need the Copilot add-on, which for businesses is an extra cost. So that's why we don't see these turned on right away. And then in Google Workspace, Some of the workspaces licenses have this. So in a Google Doc, I can bring up a doc, and it's immediately going to come up and say, what do you want to do? I want to generate a document. Now, I'm going to use the same one. Let me pop the Gemini here. All right. Generate me a recommendation letter. For a camper or for a counselor at Space Camp to apply to the Air Force Academy. They have worked here for 5 years, excellent skills, and very high grades. Let's see what it comes up with. So this Gemini, this is my assistant kind of sitting over here. So there's our letter, kind of starting out. Now, I could only imagine how many recommendation letters these guys have to write for counselors, for campers who've been attending for years, a whole bunch of stuff. What do? They could interact with it here, but what would be if they're doing it repetitively? What do? Make an agent. Look at an agent. That's sort of that next step. That's where agentic. So now you see, instead of it just doing, but what does that agent do? That agent goes and pulls and interfaces with a lot of other systems and says, maybe into the HR system, pulls out how long have they been here? What dates were they here? What was their satisfaction surveys? All of those things come back. That's where agentic, that's why that's the next big thing. So a lot of this stuff, you guys are like, yeah, I've been seeing this a lot. I was wondering how we use it. Okay, it's there, but how do I take it and actually productionalize it to scale things? But there we go, there's our letter. Do the same thing in my Google Sheet. And so I can use that to help me in Google Sheets. Go and I could say, let's see, we'll pop over here to here and say, generate me synthetic data for campers at a week-long camp. Campers are boys and girls between the ages of 8 and 15. We need first name, last name, city, state, mission preference or preferences, meal preferences. And let's see what it comes up with. How many of you ever have to create synthetic data? These tools are fabulous for doing something like that. Now, obviously, the more information we give it, but we're doing that same sort of thing. We're just chatting directly in the document rather than back. If you're finding yourself, hey, I'm in one tool, so I could have done this with just general Gemini. It might have even generated me the Python for it. That's what you would have got out of Gemini. That's what you would have got out of GPT, or that would probably generate you Python using the Faker library. This, well, you're obviously in Google Sheets. You got it, and I don't know, is that handy? That's kind of what you expect, right? Vegetarian, nut-free, standard, gluten. I don't know, do you guys have similar charts like this? Yep. I think you guys, one of you I think might have been with me 2 years ago. We did the same thing. So maybe not, well, your colleagues were. I don't know if you've seen any of this happen since then. But this is nice when you're writing code. And then divide them up. We could say, hey, divide them up into different categories, or help organize, help arrange things. So logistics, you name it. And then just throw the email kind of, well, I could do Google Slide just in the interest of time, I'll do email. So when you've got Gemini in your mailbox, I compose in my Gmail, and I could say, please use this to cancel my service. All right, I'm typing a big long email. I'm just going to go up and use my Gemini. Write me an email to cancel my telephone service and my cable service because I'm moving. Company is Comcast. I don't know, you guys got Comcast down here or somebody else? Yeah? Let's see what it comes up with. There we go. I'm writing a cancellation of my service. But it starts, I don't have a lot of email, this is just a little dummy mailbox. But being able to go in and actually use these within your mailbox. And more you'll see it enabling it as you go. So like here, it's like create, oh, well that's pitching me another product, that's pitching me Nano Banana. Okay, so those are your tools that you're seeing integrated into your various platforms. Now, where are other people using this stuff now? Well, the next area, and this is for how many developers? Who writes code out there? Writing code, code completion. What's your code completion tool? Do you have one yet? Claude Code, yep. GitHub Copilot, well, yep. Amazon Q Developer if you're in the AWS world. GitHub Copilot, this is where Copilot comes in. Anthropic's Claude, Sonnet, and the others. And now I just heard about that Claude. I got to go check out Claude Work, right? For the workflow and code assist. Now in this case, I'm going to show you off my VS Code, because I've got my VS Code configured here. So let me bring my VS Code over here. So this is my VS Code. I've got Gemini in my VS Code. I'm just going to open up a folder here. Make sure I got my Space Camp. Yeah, this will work. And I'm going to go ahead and say, write me a tic-tac-toe. Oh, let's give it a little bit of a hint here. I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it game.py. I'm going to pop over here, and I'm going to say, write me a tic-tac-toe game. Now, obviously, you could probably find one on the internet. Yes, I know. But it's going to take some hints. I got a Python file sitting there, so what's it hopefully going to generate it in, and not just build me an HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? Okay, there's my new file named tic-tac-toe. Do we like it? Yeah, cool. And now maybe, what do I need to run it? How do I run it? I don't know, do I need any libraries? It probably doesn't need any libraries, but thinking, okay, open your terminal, go into that directory, Python tic-tac-toe. Yeah, I know, that's what I was expecting it to be. Let's just see if it runs. There we go. Oh, okay, planner position 1. Where am I going to go? 1. Okay. Oh, X's. I'm now O's. Oh, that's kind of horrible. Okay, have the computer play the O and the human play X. So what's it going to do? It's going to look at the code. Now, I could pick this middle of the road. I've already got the code written. I've sat down. I've written it all. I've set that as my context. So in the lower corner, it says context item 1. Right now, it's got whatever, just the Python I'm working on. I could take an entire directory. I could take an entire documentation. We have a roadshow we do with training. We actually take it into customers with robots that play soccer. And we give the robots, really simple robots that can play just basically, they know how to go forward to get using Vex robotics. They go forward, they can find the ball, and then they move the ball, and when they get close enough to goal, they kick. And then we sit teams down. We take executives, we take all sorts of people, put them at each end of the table, and say, okay, you've never seen the code before. So my developer, you've never seen the code before? How long does it take you to make a constructive, reasonable change to that code? A week? We do it about, over here, you set that as your context, say, I need to increase this particular capability within the code. It will go in there and make you suggestions. You obviously don't have to just say, yeah, take it. Don't go adjust the missile launch control code from, a code assist tool, but yeah. So it says down here, it wants to add a function called get computer move. It wants to do that, available moves, figuring out where there's already X's or not, and then go ahead and return a random choice. Okay, so we'll accept that. So it wants to go ahead and we'll accept that code, and let's see how our code goes now. Oh, it took the middle, 3. No, I'm going to take 3, and I'm going to take 2, and I win. Okay, have the computer use a min-max algo. That's a common max you'd use on this rather than just arbitrary. So you're going to say, oh yeah, because look, it was just randomly picking a box. Now we will never be able to win now, because there's no way to win tic-tac-toe. Movie reference, anybody? War Games, excellent. Yeah, there we go. So now we got our war games. So once it's figuring out, refining the scoring system, going through there, so it's going to figure out how the AI should play. Now, if it gets too perfect, though, how are we going to let the kids win? So maybe we'll say, well, have it use the AI a certain amount of time and allow, accidents to happen. Add a little bit of variation in there. But speeds up development. Has it changed the way you're using it when you're using Anthropic Claude to do your code?
It does. In fact, GitHub Copilot will actually pick the best model for you.
Yep.
10% discount.
Absolutely, yeah. So when you're using GitHub Copilot, not to be confused with Microsoft 365 Copilot and everything else called Copilot, GitHub is nice because you can actually choose the different models to use when you're actually going and utilizing. So Gemini here is using Gemini's model. Anthropic's using, I think Claude, you're just using Claude's model and you're licensing it. What you typically with these type tools, you receive a certain amount of usage. So that way somebody doesn't share it like a Netflix subscription and all your developers are using one license. You get a certain amount of usage. But hey, there we go. I think we've got a new, we're bringing in random. Okay, oh no, they're getting rid of random. And we now have our, I didn't check the code, but 1, let's go for 4. Nope, it blocked me. Let's go for 3. Nope, it blocked me there. I guess I got to go to, that's 8. And then I got to go to 9, and it's a draw. And it will never win. Now, add a graphic board. See what it does. But this is what we're doing with these things. This is what your developers are craving. Because they don't like to sit there and just deal with the little basic stuff. They want to be creative. They want to explore. This is going to change. This is what's changing our industry. Any university folks here from universities? This is going to have to change. What do you teach?
Business school management.
Business school management. They're not going to have developers. They're going to have, still need the ideas, but this is going to write that code for them. Because where we're at here and a year ago, I mean, this is exponential. These things are producing better code or analyzing code, updating code, commenting code. So once it's done, I say comment this code. And it will go down. How many of you hate commenting? How do you remember that? Yes. So, yep, so here we go. So it wants to take all this away. I don't know what it's going to come up with. I'm just going to trust it. So it's looking to say, I want to add all this, and let's see what we get. Oh, did it make a web service? I'd have to look at the code to find out what it did. But that's not bad for a code. But think about pointing it instead to other code and say, what does this block of code do? Refactor this particular code to reduce or remove redundancies from this and suggestions. And what it's coming out with is just amazing. Yeah, I don't know where it actually put the boards. It might have gone up on another screen somewhere. I'll save that and look at the end here. All right. So that's what your code assisting tools are doing. And so a lot of different ones for that. Now, the last part I want to show you about as we wrap up, because I don't know what's my end time? I don't know. There's lunchtime after this, I know that. So, is your developer APIs. What does it actually look like for a developer to use this stuff? Okay, so you've got your organization as a website. So Spacecamp, the Spacecamp website, and they want to add a chatbot to that. How do they actually do that? Or they want to add, maybe they've got these camper, maybe they've got a photographer who runs around the kids, takes photos all over camp. They run some AI tools that actually come back and say, here we found pictures of your kids or your kid at camp, which is reasonably good. It did find my son wrong once, but my son owned the exact same shirt and the kid looked like my son, but it wasn't my son. It's hilarious. It was like 2 years ago. Remember where they added the photo and that? Yeah, I remember it was, but it's like create a movie montage of each kid so that they go home with a clip of videos. And, we like to homebrew stuff up like that. Or you want to add a chatbot to the website, or you want to add code. So if you're a coder, and let's say that TikTok code game, I want to add a funny, based on the gameplay, add a funny comment at the end, Or add a, if you're a big fan of, various game shows and stuff, add, what's the one where you land on the bad, you lose the money with, what's that?
Pressure luck.
Pressure luck. And you want to add a whammy. Add a whammy if they lose. So it shows a whammy. And you want to add that in your application. How do you put that in your Python? How do you put that in your Java? That's where you go. That's where the developer APIs come in. So for example, if I pop out in Google, we use what's called Vertex AI is our platform for this. So I'll pop over here to Vertex. So that's Google's name for this. So I got it already loaded up. I did queue things up. So Vertex AI, this is the programming side. This is where we pay for our usage of it. So rather than having a subscription to something, this is where we pay to process data through the large language model. So this is what a lot of agents might be built on top of, so you're paying for your cloud usage. So when we think of the cloud, you pay for virtual machines, right? Pay for how long you have the computer turned on, how much CPU and how much RAM and how big the hard drive is. And that's what we've sold businesses for the last 10, 12 years. How many of you are in the cloud already? Yeah? Companies are in the cloud, your organizations? We use data analytics tools. We use tools like BigQuery and Redshift and Athena to analyze really big data sets. So we do that. We pay for that usage of those platforms based on how much data we put, how much data transfers we do and things. Well, with Vertex AI Studio or with the tools Bedrock in Amazon. Anybody use Bedrock? Okay. Or Azure. Azure, I can't remember what Azure was on my slide. We could go and do this. So I'm going to go in here and say, I want to build a prompt. So I wanted to say, create recommendation letters for staff at Space Camp. These letters need to be less than one. Actually, I should put that over here in my system instructions. So I'm going to go over here, create recommendation letters for staff. Then one page should include dates of employment and any specific comments made on evaluations that reference the staff member by name. All right, so those are my system instructions. So now over here I say, prepare one for Grant. Now let's see what happens. Because what's happening? It is using my prompt plus the system instructions over here. Okay, and that's where you could say limitations. So like we told it, only do it for. So this, you say, well, Grant, you did this in Gemini. Yes, but that was me interacting as a user. I now can deploy this as an application. Okay, because what does that code look like? You're my Python guy, right back there? Here's your code. You're going to pip install, and there's that call you make to return. So you pass in the data over here. You're preparing the text. Oh, I did not do it. Here's my prompt there, basically, and my grounding. This is the part that everybody writes in JSON now. A lot better when it's in JSON, when it's nicely structured with your instructions and your limitations. And these can be much larger. And so that's where you start to build this out, and you build your own application to do what you want. So all of these third-party companies that come along and these tools, somebody asks, hey, which tools do we use? How do we know? Some tools fly by night. This is the sort of thing, maybe you only need this for 30 days. Maybe it's just being used for a big project at university. Maybe it's being used at business, you just need to go through, you need to collect a bunch of data, do some preliminary processing to it, collect the information, transform it, you give it system instructions. But now we're actually giving it to our code. So this is not for everybody. If you're not a code writer, you're like, yeah, Grant, that's not my side. As I said, we're talking about a lot of different ways people are going to use these tools. And that's what this sort of does. And what are we doing? And down here we even see that this particular model and includes, is there various things turned on or off? So different features and things like that you can have in there. I didn't specifically code any of these to have a threshold for harassment, dangerous content, so it's going to be sort of the default level of this. But you can set them really high, you can set them lower depending on what your needs are. And what you're doing is you're building that as your code. So it works like that Gemini chat, but instead we're actually building the code that's going to go on the back end. And then my code developer is going to take and just, you're going to variabilize all this. So you've got an input form. So this isn't building that import form, that's more of your code. But with code assist, they're saying, okay, well maybe you're in here and you're like, okay, Grant, but this needs some sort of authentication. So I'm going to go back over to here. I want to say insert a block of code that creates a whammy image when the player loses using Gemini Nano Banana, which is one of their libraries for generating images. So now at the end of it, you play, and in fact, what we should probably do is in the code, though I'd probably put it earlier, generate it so we got it in the code, so that way we're not waiting for it to go. But it's figuring out. Let's see if it gets whammy. That would be fun, right? Do we get Elizabeth Banks in here? Yeah. Right, she's the host of that one, I think. The brain's a little slow, you know, in the cold. It's kind of like a lithium car battery. Anybody's lithium batteries hurting this week? We suffer it from about November to about March in Chicago. Still good. You're still saving tons of gas and all that. But if I've got an electric Mini and an electric Trailblazer, and they're both. We're not getting the range we get in the summertime. Okay, so here we go. Show the whammy. So what's it want to do? Oh, okay. It obviously did not want to call Gemini Banana. It didn't know it didn't generate me my image. So use Vertex AI to generate the whammy image. So we'll accept that. Authenticate using ADC. That's just a little code from the developer to say use application of alt credentials from Google. Figure it out. We'll see what that comes out back with. But this is the idea of the studio. Now, I'll end here. It doesn't just have to do our code. Oh, by the way, up here in our instructions, there's our Gemini model. Remember I told you would come back to there? Because what he's got to worry about, as by developers, you have to worry, what's the cost to run this, Grant? And am I doing it efficiently? If it just needs to be quick, I could use a Flash model. So I could go down here into Gemini, which would be cheaper. I could even go to an older model, which is cheaper. Okay? Because what you pay for in these, and that's where your developers have to now understand, what are my units of consumption on this? You know, we're using tools like translation tools to go words and phrases from one to another. We pay by the number of characters. When we're using tools like data and we're doing data transfer, we're paying for amounts of bytes transferred. What are we paying for here? Well, as you start to dive deeper and deeper into the large language model world and that, you pay by what's called a token. Now, a token is a unit that goes into the model or comes out of the model. You can typically think of a token, a good way, at least with text, think of it as a syllable rather than a word. So like they say Harry Potter, the book of Harry Potter is like 600,000 tokens. So for you to feed that in, I think, or is that the entire works of one of the two? But you could look up and say, how many tokens would Harry Potter be? And it would come back. In fact, hey Siri, how many tokens in Harry Potter? And somebody's phone's going to answer that for us. But there's other things. So over here is Nano Banana. Nano Banana to generate me a image or to process an image. So I could say generate, and we can actually jump back and we can actually do this in Gemini. I could actually go back to Gemini, have a chat, and I could actually say I want to create an image. This is using the same library. It's just one is me using it interactively on a subscription-like basis with Gemini, Gemini Pro, Copilot, those. The other is using it on my back-end system. So if we wanted to take campers and make them look like they're really in space. So it takes their photo, we do it on blue screen and put them in space, just like you'd see in photo booths, all that stuff. So we're going to say describe an image, generate a picture of 3 space campers on the moon with a bear in the background, right? Because it's going to see camping. Let's see what it comes up with. So this is calling Nano Banana. That's what Nano, it's all about images. So this is going to generate. Oh, we got a lunar scene, so I figured out we want to be on the moon. Oh, I said the moon. I'm curious, are we going to get a tent? What are we going to get out of this picture? And what's the bear? Is the bear going to be wearing a space mask? He is. I mean, that's what I envisioned. If you were a kid, is that what you know, I'm still a kid. Is that what you envisioned? Space campers? We got a new logo or a new thing for the website, right? What's that? The fire, yes. With solar panels around it. They got solar panels. Sal, what's the next step beyond that? Well, that is called VEO, or VEO. This is what he was mentioning. VEO was the tool. VEO 3.1, we're going to take that exact same thing. And we're going to put it into VEO 3. And VEO 3 is going to take two. Yep. VEO 3 is going to take about 3 minutes to generate a video. And we'll go wrap up at all the little things we've seen. So I just got the 5-minute warning before the hook comes out. So, oh, videos. Okay. Oh, that's right, because I didn't change that to generate me a video. Now, VEO typically does 8-second videos. Now, when you're using this programmatically, this one you do have to tell your developers you're very cautious about. 40 cents a second when you're paying for it back on the back end. Vibe coding, who's heard that term? Vibe coding? What's vibe coding these days? Vibe coding is using your code assist tool like you saw me doing, going in there, putting things together, come up with ideas, and then quickly operationalizing it, right? Watch out with those things. Those are great internally facing type hackathons. I had one of my, we had a little hackathon, and one of my colleagues went and put it up on the web and was using an API behind the scenes, and it got abused. People will say, ooh, look, this is generating free photos for me. Well, it's free to them, you're paying on the back end. So when you are developers, that's our last little part where you're using like Vertex or using Bedrock or those, you do have to make sure you understand what you're paying for in the generation. Because obviously, as my kids would say, Dad, the lights just dimmed, while this AI is generating this 8-second video. But here comes our video. All right. I think I got my sound on too.
Connect strut gamma 7.
Securing the base plate now.
Alignment looks good from here. Connect strut gamma 7.
So that was our 8-second video. But that's what Nano Banana is. So when they said they used, I think it was the Coca-Cola Christmas video with the trucks and all the animals and everything, that used something like 10,000 prompts. And then they kind of cut it together with what they wanted to mix that together. Because I know my son was all that, Dad, you know how much? And I'm like, okay, well, if they had just done the prompts and paid rack rate, a bunch of 8-second prompts, which if you look at it, nothing's more than about 8-second continuous. And it's all about what does a prompt have and the details. So we go back and revise this stuff. So that would have been about 10,000 prompts, about $32,000 in prompting. But we didn't need actors. You didn't need the possum to do that. You didn't need the polar bear driving the truck. It was able to generate that. The Will Smith video at the beginning, that was almost, I think he did say that was VEO 3 for creation. But this is how all that's. So yeah, we could generate, add them eating spaghetti around a campfire. And we'll end with that. We'll let it do that. So we'll pop back on that one. Now, let's just check on a couple of the other things we had running. So here we go. We have our space camp. Here is our video. That was our presentation. So here is our presentation it created for us. Sorry, I can't tell the icons. Okay, so this was our merger of Space Camp, from Space Camp to Artemis. The journey from Space Camp to the Artemis era. Okay, I wish I was in space, why they did it, the history, why they go through. So it summarized your program here at Space Camp. What Artemis's goal is, the launch system, the payload, the orbit it's going to take, the science in the orbit, discovering the South Pole. Okay, you're going. And look, we got kids at the end dreaming of going up into space. Cool. So that was one of our artifacts we generated from our Book, where's our video overview? That is, isn't that, that's unfortunately one of the big problems. You're looking for hallucination. Sorry.
Picture Liberty Island in New York Harbor. You're at the base of the Statue of Liberty. You know, from her pedestal all the way up to the torch, she's about 305 feet tall. She is massive, an icon. Now, open your eyes. Imagine standing right next to her is a machine. A machine that is actually taller.
And I'm guessing significantly louder.
Oh, definitely.
So that created us a 13-minute video audio on our.
They have
Now,
the-
we would have to listen to that to make sure it made sense, right? That they didn't promise the kids will go into
And then there's
space
the salsa
for space
program.
camp. So,
Space Academy.
yeah, but that's, sorry, I kind of disrupted your question. You asked that one? Yeah, validation is one of those things. And it's just like anything else. It's trust. It's learning trust in something. Trust but verify. Right, and that'll come over time. When you're first doing, you have a lot of verification. Does it speed you up? Will the code assist once your developers become comfortable? And they know yes, but they still need to know the code, but it's taking care of their semicolons or spaces, all that stuff, because the code won't run. The same stuff we used to go through with just that. But when people ask me that question, one of the things I often throw at them, especially because I had a daughter who had to learn how to drive and all that, was cruise control in a car. You know, you first start learning to drive, I'm like, tell your kids, don't touch the cruise control. My daughter, she's like, Dad, why would I even use cruise control? Love the gas pedal. Well, big road trip in the summer, and it was like, Dad, I figured out the cruise control. Now what do we have? We are seeing the adaptation in the last couple of years of the cruise control where it keeps, the distance, keeps track of the car in front. Are you using it yet? You hate it, right? It slams on the brakes, you don't trust it, things like that. And then the lane detection, left or right, we hate it. Until you then go on a really long load trip or something and you get to understand how it works. We have to understand how these tools work. They are just tools. They're not replacement. They should supplement, AI should assist us as humans in our jobs.